Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is
Steve.
And Steve, what fun-go-lucky, frolic, just good time movie are we talking about today?
Hey, alright, so today we are talking about the feel-good movie of 2017. We're talking about Wind River, directed by Tyler Sheridan and starring Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen.
With a cameo appearance by John Berthal. So my question
to you,
Steve, is how exactly does this fit into the MCU? I was a little confused.
It's the Punisher origin story, obviously. It could totally fit in that
there, and Scarlet Witch, and I didn't know, when did Scarlet Witch join the FBI, or is this part of like the whole WandaVision storyline? I'm so confused.
Jeremy Renner is just straight up playing like ultimate Hawkeye. It's great. He's just playing grounded Hawkeye.
There were quite a few MCU alums in this. I like at first I was like, okay, well it's got Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner, so that's pretty funny. And then the fact that fucking Punisher showed up was like, okay, that's a bridge too far. You can't have that many MCU actors in the same movie and not acknowledge it at this point.
Well, and it's 2017, so like they were all like at the height of their MCU fame at that point, right? Like, what year did Punisher come out? Like, John Berthal was basically already Punisher at this point, wasn't he?
I think so. I don't know. That was years ago, Steve. I've slept since then.
No, that's fair. That's fair. It might have been right around this time.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just interesting to see, because you told me like Jeremy Renner. I'm like, okay, well, he did one good movie, and then for some reason everyone put him in everything, and then it like turned out that he could only act sometimes.
He's got the Clint Eastwood, right? Like he's got two modes. He's got sad Jeremy Renner, and he's got angry Jeremy Renner, and that's about it.
Yeah. So this is an interesting watch. I never heard of this. Is this a Netflix original, or is it just currently on Netflix?
No, so it's just currently on Netflix. Basically,
okay.
The background on this is it's written and directed by Taylor Sheridan, and he's really famous for TV work at this point. He's got that whole neo-Western TV empire with Yellowstone and 1883 and 1923 and Tulsa King and Landman and like all that shit that you see ads for on Paramount. That's him. That's what he does constantly now. And they're all really popular, really well-received shows, and that's kind of primarily what he does now. But before that, he did write a few movies and direct a few movies, and he's kind of back and forth in that world. Mainly the reason I wanted to watch this is because I'm not a Tyler Sheridan guy really at all. I've seen one season of Tulsa King, and that's it. He's just never interested me. But the reason I picked this movie is, and you and I were talking about this earlier, there's just been like a massive snowstorm all across the country this past weekend, and I was snowed in for 3 days, and I didn't have to go to work. And I'm like, what's a movie I can watch where it's just cold and people are doing things? And, you know, you can only watch Fargo and The Thing so many times. So I went on Netflix and I saw Wind River, and I knew a lot of people really liked it, and it was a Tyler Sheridan, so I'm like, I'll give it a shot, and that's essentially why I picked it. But I'm interested to hear what you think, because I was pleasantly surprised by this. I thought this was pretty good.
I enjoyed it. not to give away the ratings at the end, but like kind of where I'm sitting on it is I'm about at a 3 out of 5 right now on it. Um, I think it had a pretty strong start, and I quite liked the ending overall. It just dragged in the middle a little bit for me, and like it kind of left me at the end of this going like, I think my biggest like problem takeaway with this is what exactly does Elizabeth Olsen's character do in this movie? Besides get everybody killed. Um, that was like my biggest problem with watching it is just it kind of dragged in the middle, and I found myself like losing attention in it. And it kind of came back when they're like back at his house, and he's kind of goes into the background of what happened to his daughter, what he knows and doesn't know about what happened to his daughter. Um, and like that's when it kind of picked back up for me. But there's just like a good section, I'd say, between raiding the fucking meth house and that, where it just really really dragged, and it didn't feel like much was happening to me. Almost kind of like, this is gonna sound mean, and I mean it too, but it felt like I was watching the extended pilot of like a USA series pitch of like a fucking propaganda show, but set on a reservation. And instead of the reservation cops, it was just going to be fucking Jeremy Renner as the fish and wildlife expert. He has to keep solving murders. Um,
I'm basically entirely with you. I do also think like it's kind of like a 3 out of 5 sort of movie. The only pushback on the USA TV pilot thing I'll give is like it's exactly that. It just looks like a real movie. Like it's
no,
shot
that's
very
fair.
well. It's very pretty. It's a very pretty movie.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say that like at one point, I think they had to write around their limitations for shooting, because I did think it was pretty funny that they're sitting there at the house and it's just like super hard blizzard, everything's coming down, and then they like go back to the body and she's like, it was blizzard not 20 minutes ago. Yeah, it comes in waves. I'm like, does it though? Or did you just only have this location for a certain amount of time? um, that was like the biggest point where I felt like the budget was showing itself, maybe. But that being said, this is definitely a very budget-friendly movie. Certainly, they were able to kind of get a lot of these actors that were pretty big for the time, for like late 2010s. That's they're all at the height of their MCU fame. So it's 2017, so this is after Civil War for Renner and Elizabeth Olsen, and I think you're right that Punisher was coming out at that time. So getting to put the budget more into the cast is kind of cool, and not having to worry so much about like location or effects work, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think it looks really good, but that's just the kind of vibe I was getting like from a story perspective of. I felt like they added an extra like 20 minutes to this movie, which is funny to say because I was kind of tired last night. I was thinking, I might have to message Steve and say I need to do a topic instead because I'm kind of just tired. I don't know if I have like a 2.5 hour movie or something in me. And I looked at the time, I'm like, oh, it's only an hour and 46 minutes. That's not bad. And then like suddenly in the middle, that became a really long hour and 46 minutes.
I'm with you on the fact that the middle drags a little bit. I feel like the big problem for me is I think that the mystery itself is just not particularly interesting or compelling. And they don't really do like any detective work to make it compelling. Like they do the autopsy on the body, they talk to the meth addict, and then basically everything else just gets handed to them. So it feels like we're kind of just like killing time until we get to the part where people start dying again. So yeah, it does kind of lull in the middle. I do like Elizabeth Olsen in this. I feel like her and Renner's relationship is kind of the beating heart of the movie and part of what makes it so interesting. I think maybe why, because we're kind of on the same page, but I think maybe why I might like it a little bit more than you is I love movies and stories about just like competency porn. Like I love when there's a guy or a girl or just a person who's just really good at something. And they're super
Hmm.
good at it, and that's like their whole character is that they're just good at their fucking job. There's a scene early on in this where like Renner is making his own bullets at home, and he's sniping the guys at the ending shootout. And when they're in the meth lab, everyone else gets taken down by that like pepper spray thing, and he's just chilling in the back with a shovel and takes them both out. There's something
Hmm.
about his like sort of effortlessly good at his job thing that I really like and I really enjoy in his performance. Um, but really the kind of crux of that and part of why I wanted to talk about it is I really like this contrast a lot of movies like this have, and it's mostly in like Clint Eastwood movies you see it in a lot of his like 80s and 90s movies. I like this contrast between the way investigating and police work is done on that sort of FBI procedural scientific bureaucratic level being contrasted with this sort of like cowboy archetype, this person who's not really a cop but he's much better at the cops, and it becomes about like community and instincts versus bureaucratic red tape. There's a scene early on where they've got they're doing the autopsy on the body, and I love this little detail of where they have this argument where they need to put that the cause of death is homicide because that's the only way the FBI will come and investigate. And the coroner's like, look, we can say that that a murder was involved in this, or like there was a crime happened in this, but they didn't die because they were killed. They died because they were out in the cold. And that kind of like back and forth of like the rules prevent you from solving the crime, and the person who can solve the crime is a person who isn't a cop. I really like that tension, and I like how that evolves between Olsen and Renner's character, where she's clearly out of her depth in this, and he's not. But she's the one who's supposed to be able to figure this out, and he's the one who ultimately does.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. It just I think the biggest problem is for me in regards to Elizabeth Olsen's character is she does not contribute anything to the investigation. She is arguably just like a liability the whole time.
Sure.
Um and like to what you're talking about as like a commentary on the uselessness of bureaucracy, um it's interesting because I understand the argument, but also like personally I believe bureaucracy is the secret like greatest weapon of all time, and like just attempts to dig at it only make it stronger. It's like what's the devil's greatest trick? Convincing the world he didn't exist. What's bureaucracy's greatest trick? Convincing the world it's incompetent at anything, when it is shockingly competent. So I'm a little bothered by that, and I guess the thing for me that really like hammers it home with, as good as the like not good but like as well acted and tense, from like a filmmaking standpoint, the reveal scene of what happened to this girl and her boyfriend, is it it you said it earlier, it's just given to us. The character doesn't do anything to like discover it. And I feel like even if she didn't, quote unquote accomplish anything from like a bureaucratic standpoint, just as a character functioning in the film, I feel like it's a mistake not to at least have her contribute to like entering the trailer and seeing something that like tells her that story. Like as cool as it might be to get the like, jump scare shotgun blast through the door, yada yada, I just can't help but feel like it makes her character feel completely useless to the plot to such a degree that it feels more of like a detriment, than it does like a commentary
I
or
do
a metaphor.
think I do think that you're right, and I think one of the problems with this is that you've got a cast of primarily men, and then you've got Elizabeth Olsen coming in, and she's a girl, and she constantly gets like one-upped and infantilized by the rest of the people there who are essentially just making fun of her. And that wouldn't necessarily like trigger my red flag immediately, but I think that combined with the rape scene together paints like a weird picture of this, where I think the movie, it ends on this title card, spoilers obviously, it ends on this title card about how there isn't a statistical category for missing Native American women, and that this is an epidemic, and we know we have no idea how many are lost. And I feel like the movie's never really about that per se. Like, I understand that Jeremy Renner's daughter went missing and they're investigating a woman's rape and murder, but the movie's not really in any way like about an epidemic of missing children or an epidemic of a community left to defend for itself because no one will come in and try to help them. And I feel like that's sort of what I was saying earlier about like this contrast between the cowboy and the bureaucratic police officer. I feel like the way they make Jeremy Renner so overly competent and her so overly incompetent, and then it's only sort of, it wants to have this commentary about Native American women, but the only roles it has for the two, like the 3 or 4 women characters in the movie, characters is a little too broad. The one woman character in the 3 cameos is one to get raped and murdered, one to be completely useless, and the other 2 to be really sad and useless and say one line to make fun of the white girl. And I think that's probably a bigger issue that's probably worth discussing. The flashback scene with her and John Barenthal, I liked their chemistry. I liked the nature of the crime. I disagreed with the choice to just go for it with the rape scene. That seemed a little excessive, especially because, like you said, no one solves the murder. The movie just abruptly cuts to a flashback to explain everything to you, and you've already understood the context of why this happened. You've already kind of done a lot with the reality of violence and where everyone is outside, and they have this really good speech early on about what happens when you try to run in the cold and you start coughing up blood and all that shit. I feel like a lot of that was unnecessary, and then the bit at the end became especially unnecessary.
I'm torn on it a little bit, and I'll tell you why. So this is an R-rated movie. There's like no chance of like children seeing this. At least with, you know, good parents. And for me, I'm gonna talk about this by talking about something else. When we went to Disney, we went on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Leah really liked it, so when we got back home, we asked her if she wanted to start watching the pirate movies, and she said yes, so we did. You know, I like the first one, and I remember really liking the second one, and, you know, Davy Jones looks cool. But I remember not really caring for the third one. And then we started it, and it starts with a bunch of people being hanged, and the ending of the opening, the prologue scene, is a child being hanged and singing the Yo-Ho bottle of rum blah 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 song, and that's what like begins some of the plot of the movie. And I'm gonna rephrase that again. The movie begins with the hanging of a child. And that shit came out in like 2007. I could not imagine Disney doing that today, and I think we've lost something for it. As superfluous or like inappropriate as acts of violence or like just really distasteful things to see, and in all fairness with the Pirates movie, right, like it implies he's hanged. You don't actually see the kid dangling or anything like that. So actually showing the rape, maybe, but even then, it's so quickly done and actively contradicts what we've been told earlier So it might be a problem in that regard of like wanting to show it, but then not actually wanting to commit to what you've said happened. Um, I don't know. I'm of two minds on it. Where I definitely could see the complaint of it feels superfluous or feels like it's going too far. It feels like it might just be there for shock value. But at the same time, I do feel like we're just in a place where, for whatever reason, we're afraid to like touch people's sensitivities and trigger people that were like self-censoring things that we didn't used to on film, and I feel like something's being lost for that. So, I'm a bit torn on that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I just like you, I'm gonna pivot to something else and then kind of circle back to show you what I mean. Because I'm not squeamish about these things. These things don't bother me. I think, like you said, we're a little bit we've gotten a little bit too coddled in the idea that fiction can't show you bad things, and I'm not for that. But here's another example that came to mind while I was watching this. So Watchmen, right? Watchmen's a really good
Mhm.
book. Alan Moore is kind of notorious for showing a lot of rape scenes throughout his work, and he's had mixed degrees of success of utilizing them narratively. But Watchmen's a really good example because there's the rape of Silk Spectre. There's the idea that Dan is impotent and violence is the thing that turns him on. There's the idea that Dr. Manhattan and Laurie can't get it on because he doesn't care about her in that way. And like that's a story where the coupling of violence and sex is a part of the story. It's one of those things where like it's seen and it's shown multiple times because you're meant to see these people as people, and you're meant to see them as power fantasies that includes sex. Miracle Man's another one where there is a lot of violence that happens, but the sort of disturbing, dehumanizing side of it is kind of the point of the story and the commentary it wants to make on superheroes. When I think about using a rape scene in fiction, I'm not saying you can't do it, and I'm not saying that using it is automatically going to cause it to have an asterisk. What I am saying is because we've had so many years and years and years of using it as a cheap plot device, when you use it, I feel like your story has to grapple with it in a way that's either overt or direct. And I feel like the biggest problem with this movie is it tries to say it's a movie about the plight of Native American women while never being a
Mhm.
movie about the plight of Native American women. I think the only two instances where I feel like that's a thematic concern is when she's raped and when the title card happens. Because beyond that, I don't think this movie is saying a lot about the violence against Native American women specifically. I think it's saying a lot about the relationship between a reservation community versus the larger government and the isolation of that and the failures of bureaucracy to do anything if the right paperwork doesn't say the right thing, and the need for people like Jeremy Renner's character who understand the place they're coming from in order to seek justice outside the law. I think all that's there, but I don't think anything about violence against women is actually there. So to have the scene and then drop the title card like a token, that kind of rubs me the wrong way, in concert with the only other female character in the movie being, like you said, completely useless. So, like, if that's your thesis, if your thesis is the plight of Native American women, well, you didn't treat the one woman in your movie particularly good, and then you didn't do anything with the Native women. So, what are you really saying?
Yeah, and then there's like also, just a like uncomfortable thing. John Berthol's like a man in his 30s or 40s, and I don't know how old the actress is in that scene, but her character is supposed to be 18, and John Berthol certainly doesn't look like a 20-year-old. um, so it's like this,
he
like
went to Iraq, yeah.
yeah. So it's like this uncomfortable like subtext to it, which certainly 18-year-old girls that are horny will think themselves ready for like grown men. That's like a really normal thing for like a teenager or early adult to do, barely adult, we'll say, to quote the movie, not the not the fucking porn category. Um, I said it and I was like, I better qualify that. But like they'll they show them and they're like, planning their future together and stuff, and it's meant to be sweet, but it's like, this is pretty fucking trashy too. I just like, just makes you feel like she doesn't know what she's doing. They have all this commentary like she ran 6 miles barefoot in the snow before she died. That girl was a warrior. Like, yeah, like there's a dissonance between what you're writing about her and what you're showing her doing that's a bit weird.
And I think
maybe that's just my sensibilities or something too. I don't know, but that's like I generally tend to be more like as long as they're both adults, I really don't give a fuck. But there's like believing that, and then there's like trying to show it on film that makes things a little bit awkward.
And we could move off of this point here if you want, but and I think the sort of thing that underscores that too is by the end it wants to be about those things and that girl, but most of the movie isn't, because so much of what motivates the characters, what Jeremy Renner is after, is trying to get justice for his own daughter vicariously through solving this murder. He cares about this girl insofar as they knew each other and that she was his daughter's best friend, but his whole sort of emotional driving force is the justice that his daughter never received. So solving the case is always emotionally second at hand for him. So to position it that way and then introduce her to her only once in that moment, I feel like does a disservice to what that character is supposed to be, especially because you also don't get any time with her parents outside of the 2 scenes at the beginning and end. Like her dad, you got a couple of really good scenes with him at the beginning and end. Like, I like him and Jeremy Renner's interactions quite a lot, but you're never going back to them. You're never getting like a moment where like he's impatient at the amount of time it's taking to solve his daughter's murder. There's no contention there. Renner has a perspective on the girl who was killed, and she's best friends with his daughter, but then her dad never has a perspective on her best friend. Like there's no reciprocity there. And I feel like that's also part of what makes it a little bit difficult. But again, I think mileage is going to vary when you watch that. And I do think the ending shootout is glorious. So you kind of forget about it in the moment.
Okay, can we talk about the ending shootout? Because, like, what the fuck are these guys planning to do? Because they're trying to play it all cool and stuff at first, but like it's the second she sees him, she's like, "What happened to your face?" And so you're like, "Okay." And then they're like trying to flank the police as they're walking to the trailer, and then she's knocking on the trailer, and the guy's like, "Hey, FBI's at the door, open up." And then the fucking gunshot happens, yada yada. And I'm just like, okay, so let's just say that Jeremy Renner decided to kill the lions and was busy dealing with that. He didn't notice any of the shootout happen, yada yada. And Elizabeth Olsen and all the other characters die. The fuck are they gonna do? They're like employees on record at this place. There's gonna be some evidence of a fucking shootout that went down.
They mentioned that there were cameras all over the drill site, and they were just going there to ask for footage. Like, they could have gotten away with it all.
It wasn't like it's just tribal police that showed up. The police from the town showed up. So, like, the officers know that they're there. The FBI knows that they sent someone there, that, like, she's made it clear what her trail is. The fuck are you guys gonna do? And, like it's different by the time you get, like, to the end of the shootout and the one motherfucker is running away in the snow. By the way, just, this isn't actually a complaint. This is just, like, a funny thing. What are the chances that the one guy that actually did, like, the full extent of the crime is the one that survives the shootout and runs away? He could have just been the first one to die. No, Jeremy Renner wouldn't have known. He would have gotten to the dude on the top of the mountain. He's like, "Did you do it?" It's like, actually, no. That was the other guy that you shot him right away. He's already dead. That would have been a little awkward. I don't know if he would still like carried out the whole poetic justice there or not. It's very like Goku and Krillin fighting as the final match kind of thing, or Goku and Roshi rather. But like, you know, they do all this shootout. They're trying to kill cops, and they're dumb fucking idiot white boy criminals that like they're out in the mountains for a reason because they couldn't find another fucking job. Fair, but just again, like as a movie watcher, getting all this escalation in this like, you know, big epic shootout. Yeah, that's all cool and well and good, but then like, you know, it doesn't take long for your logic brain to kick in and go, so let's just say that they succeeded. What next? They just gonna keep killing cops as they like come to the fucking drill site over and over and over again? Or are they just gonna have to like go run away and hope that no one ever finds them and like get, you know, fake identities and shit? What are they gonna do? What is their end game here?
I will say that didn't bother me too much because it really felt to me like what they were trying to say with them is they thought the crime they committed would have genuinely no consequence. And when consequence literally came knocking, they just flat out panicked. That they had not thought any of this through at any point. And they're just there, security guards, they're bored, they're not thinking, they drink all the time, and they carry guns all the time. And they just straight up panicked. I think that's more of what's going on there is like, I think there wasn't really like any forethought to it. It was just this idea of like, we never thought someone was going to come knocking and ask us. We just thought that it was going to skirt under the rug like so many other situations like this might have otherwise. And like you said, the reason I didn't think too much about it or mind it is because the second the guns start firing, I was all in. Like, I loved that shootout. I loved Jeremy Renner with his fucking sniper rifle in the woods, camouflaged with his white coat. I loved this little vengeful speech to the dude at the end, and he watches him just walk over and die.
That's fantastic.
That's so good.
He doesn't even make it like 600 feet was the fucking coldest line. That was great. Yeah, no, all that stuff was good. And, like, the thing I liked about the shootout is it didn't feel very Hollywood. It's just over so quickly.
Yes,
and, like, it's about, you know, they're sitting there getting ready to mop up, and that's when Jeremy Renner shows up, and then, like, you get the second phase of it. I thought all that was absolutely fucking sick. But, again, it's just, you have that moment, and then you have, like, your logic brain kick in. It's like, okay, but what, like... I don't know if I agree with you necessarily about they panicked because there seemed like they're all like bodied armored up inside the trailer, so it feels like there's like a plan to this. They're, you know, when the cops arrive on the scene, they're flanking them. So again, it feels like there's some kind of plan that these guys have to magically get out of this situation, and I just want to know what the fuck it is. Because I'll be honest with you, man, the fucking meth heads seem to have had a better, like, plan to deal with the cops than the fucking, like, villains of the movie did.
No, that's fair. That's fair. To your point about the shootout not feeling super Hollywood, one of my favorite things about it is every time someone has the opportunity to fire their gun, they just empty the clip. No one is thinking anything about aim or like where to hit. They are just rapid firing, and there is just a constant action of reload and shit. I'm out of bullets. And it felt really panicky in those moments, and that's what I really liked. I loved the shotgun blast is nuts, like on its own. It jump scares you. But then from there, when like she sort of like slowly regains consciousness and she like starts shooting the guy's legs and then she backs under the stairs, there's a real urgency to all of that I really, really liked.
I would agree. I think that was all like really, really well done and like just it felt very visceral. There's like the spectacle of like a shootout in a movie. We've just been doing them for so long now that it's hard to to like feel the same level of investment with it. I've talked to you about like the James Bond archetype of, oh well, it's just a guy with a gun and he's going to go through and kill a billion people and then get to the end, and then he's going to suddenly have trouble aiming at this one fucking guy or whatever. That shit always drives me crazy. It just bores the fuck out of me instantly, and I just don't like watching it. This, I think, did a good job of not just turning into that. Like, even though Jeremy Renner's character feels like he is in, as you said, like competency porn, he's in super control of the whole situation and stuff. It still feels like there's a level of danger to it that I just don't think you usually get in like a shootout action scene in a movie.
Yeah, and I think it does a lot to establish early on that not only are you in like uncharted territory up in the mountains and this kind of procedural, but that the elements and the environment themselves are really dangerous. And you're kind of always on edge about those things. So when the shootout comes, it just kind of it takes that on edgeness to another level. When Elizabeth Olsen's character first shows up, and they make a big deal about like if you go out dressed like that you are going to die. The fact that when they go to the body and they start talking about the hypothermia on the legs and how long a person could physically survive out there, and the way you'd start choking on your own blood, there are so many moments throughout where like people are really adamant about this idea that if you're not prepared out here, the environment will just straight up kill you. uh, and Jeremy Renner has that really, really good speech at the end in the hospital, where he's like, "In the city, you can get lucky. Out here, you either choose to live or you're going to die." And that is also that sort of like cowboy libertarian morality that I think he's sort of embodying. That's really interesting. And I love that moment a lot because I think he says it with so much conviction, but it underscores basically everything you're being told about this place through the entire movie. And when he says that so matter of factly, after she almost died, almost like as a way to earn her stripes, I thought that was a really good moment between those two.
I'd agree. I liked Elizabeth Olsen's character and like her arc in this of just kind of realizing that she is out of her depth and not really knowing like how to talk to people in this situation. I thought that was all like really good. I just, again, my problem with her was more from like she felt like she had no function or like a negative function completely from like a plot perspective,
Hmm.
and that just felt like, I guess, implausible to me. um it's one of those things of like, if the point of her character is that she's supposed to show the ineptness of bureaucracy, the supposed ineptness of bureaucracy, okay, fine. But when you make something, when you're trying to make a point about something and you go like too far in satirizing it or breaking it down or trying to show it as inept or impotent or whatever, you can go too far and then it just becomes laughable. So it doesn't even feel like you're actually commenting on the thing in and of itself anymore. Because if it truly was this ineffective, then it never could have become the problem that you see it as in the need to create this movie, right? And again, I think bureaucracy is like, ask me any empire what was its greatest success. It's the fact that it had a well organized bureaucracy, and so that's what I really think is like the danger of it is it seems weaker than it really is.
And I mean, to your point, I mentioned before it's kind of like a Clint Eastwood movie, but where it falls short is, like you're saying, Clint Eastwood movies do a really good job of giving you both sides of this. So he's got this one movie called Changeling from 2008, and it's based on a real true crime case. It's based on a story of a single mom who goes to work one day and she comes home and her son is missing, and she files a police report, and the police try to find him, and then they give her a call and it's like, "Hey, we found your son." and they bring the kid back and it's not her kid. And the whole rest of the movie is the police refusing to admit that they got the boy wrong, and that the real son is still out there somewhere. And eventually it comes to light that there is a serial killer out there who's kidnapping kids, and her son is likely dead, and the cops fucked up. But that movie's a really good example of what you're saying, where Eastwood's doing this really strong tension between the early 1920s, 1930s advent of modern forensic and procedural police, where they rely on a lot of new methodology to try and solve crimes that ends up just making them inept and makes a lot of them just corrupt because they want to clear their crime statistics. And it's the detective who's more old school, who follows hunches, who listens to people, who ends up uncovering the whole crime. But by the end of the movie, when Angelina Jolie's character is getting her justice for being treated that way by the cops, the very thing that supports her in that endeavor is the legal system. It's lawyers, it's government, it's oversight committees. It's a really interesting sort of push and pull of like the bureaucratic state as it exists is necessarily going to lean towards part corruption, but the only way to deal with that is with the bureaucratic state itself. And that kind of like not coming down one way or the other, but kind of showing the inherent tension of them. That's what Clint Eastwood movies do so well. And part of why I like Mystic River is that it kind of, or not Mystic River, Wind River. Mystic River is another Clint Eastwood movie. But part of the reason I like Wind River is that it kind of feels like that kind of movie, but it's nowhere near as like mature in that understanding as an Eastwood movie.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, you almost want to forgive it for all these faults just because of how fucking awesome the final scene on top of the mountain is.
Right! It's so good, dude! He's so cool in that moment.
Like I said, I would give you a chance. You were honest. You told the truth, so here's your chance. She ran 6 miles in the snow. I doubt you'll make it 600 feet. Highways over there.
And he fires the gun in his fucking ear. Like the like 3 minutes of acting that took is the best Jeremy Renner acting I've ever seen. He's so cool in that moment.
There's like certain scenes where you can tell like this is why the actor took the script. I feel like it has to be that.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
oh yeah.
I might not know how to do much as an actor, but I could do this scene. Kind of reaction from Jeremy Renner. God, that was fucking gold.
I also think that part and parcel with that ending scene, I think the movie kind of early on moves at a pretty good clip, and if you're just in the mood for a criminal thriller procedural kind of movie like this, or Mystic River, or like Copycat, or Along Came a Spider, or like any number of those like sort of cliche 90s and early 2000s just murder movies, this is a very fun one. Like it's not one that feels like it's overbearing like Cure or Seven, where it's got all this sort of like self-importance about what it is. And those are really good movies too, but they're really weighty. This is kind of not that. This is, like you said, it's kind of a junk food USA Today kind of premise that's played really straight. So like it's not a happy-go-lucky movie, but it's a fun movie.
I don't know if I'd say it's a fun movie. Given how like weighty the subject is and the fact that it's got such like a whoa scene that like just needs to be talked about. But I do think there is like a place for this movie in that it's not, Oscar worthy, but it's also not just, self-referential.
Yeah.
It's taking itself as seriously as it can. It's just maybe it happens to not be a perfect film. And so I kind of appreciate it just in that regard. Again, like, I feel like I've been mostly negative on the movie. I did legitimately enjoy, good chunks of it. It's just that we always talk about this, where sometimes it's easier to just harp on the negatives or something. And the level to which you do that might just kind of tell you that you enjoyed watching it well enough, but it doesn't actually hold steam or hold water. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I did still like it in and of the experience of watching it for the most part. So one other thing with that scene on top of the mountain before we get too far away from it, so Jeremy Renner, if there is like one stumbly kind of awkward moment in that, I think it's on one of the lines that Renner has to deliver. And it's not like his delivery that's the problem. I think it's the writing of the line that's a little bit clunky. I think the line is, "My ex-wife's people were sent here 100 years ago," or something like that. It's just the movie, I think, bravely tries to depict just how shitty reservation life really is. There's that scene early on where he's interrogating the junkie, and he's like, "You could have gotten out of here. You could have joined the military or gone to school, but you look at where you ended up." And it's like kind of showing like just how, yeah, that's great. They have reservations. It's the size of Rhode Island, but it's, the shittiest land possible. And, when you just isolate a community in this way, it kind of turns in on itself and it doesn't have the same resources. Da, 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 da. There's all these like still problems with the way the reservation system was set up and how it pigeonholes people. So I don't know. The movie's like trying to be about that to some degree, trying to provide some commentary or some insight into life on the res. I don't know. Would it have just killed them to not hire Jeremy Renner and just go ahead and get a native actor? Do you think more of this movie would have worked if they just had a Native American actor instead of Jeremy Renner? Do you think we'd question
100%.
things about it less?
Oh no, 100%. I do think that's another one of those sort of like that's in the same package as talking about the rape scene, where I feel like whatever this movie wants to be about by the last 20 minutes, it kind of isn't about for the first like 100 minutes. And that's primarily because of you just kind of can't get mileage on those themes with the people that you've cast. Jeremy Renner, if he was a native actor and he was delivering these lines and he was saying these things, I think the line that you mentioned earlier, I remember hearing it. I think he actually says like "my family," and when he says "my family," he means his son and his ex-wife, but not him. And I remember hearing that in the moment, and I had to pause. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? You're white. It's very strange. It kind of takes me out. I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. It's your family, it's your community, yada yada yada. But like, you're not native, so why are you saying this?
It's funny that we've ended up on this one, right after Avatar: Way of Water,
I know.
and we had a big discussion about like what it can mean, like white culture or Western culture, I guess in general, criticizing these things when in fact native cultures are a lot more fluid and less like stringent on what's your blood percentage kind of thing, as to who's part of their community, who's part of their tribe, so to speak, and that varies from tribe to tribe. So like maybe we're just getting caught up on that same level of thinking, and it just kind of goes to show the inherent like genetic belief in Western culture that it's hard for us to wrap our heads around these things better. But it does just like, you do kind of just wonder like, what if they did just hire a fucking native actor instead of trying to rely on, Jeremy Renner's star power to sell the fucking movie?
Well,
which is not that he did a bad job, but it's just, it does create a bit of an awkward, blend of things.
well, and with the distinction with Avatar, I feel like you're having one conversation when you're talking about a fictionalized world that's taking advantage of native aesthetics versus a movie that wants to be about a real thing with real people and casts several native actors in supporting roles. Like, it's not like you weren't aware of them. You just chose to make your leads the two white people, which does kind of like muddy the water of what exactly do you want to be about, because you've got so many other characters and so many other actors that really easily could have filled that gap for you. That becomes a little bit of a problem. I do also feel like it's worth mentioning, both with this movie's production history and release history, and with Jeremy Renner being involved, that there's kind of two layers of sex abuse scandals related to this movie. And I'm not gonna say that like makes the movie bad and you just shouldn't watch it. I just feel like we should kind of like asterisk that there, because when this movie came
I
out,
don't even know. I Okay, why is Jeremy Renner canceled? I didn't even know about this one.
okay, so before we get to Renner, I will say that the movie was initially distributed in theaters by the Weinstein Company, and then the Weinstein Company handled the distribution rights on streaming. The reason that that broke down was because of the Harvey Weinstein sex abuse scandal. Tyler Sheridan, to his credit, apparently had all the money that that the Weinstein Company would have made on the distribution rights donated to charity. I don't know the details of that. That's just literally what it says on Wikipedia. But if that's what he said happened, then cool. I'm glad he did that. Um, but Jeremy Renner last year got into some justifiable hot water because he was accused by a woman of sexual abuse, and that when she threatened when she called him out on it, he threatened to call ICE on her.
Hmm.
And
Okay, I did hear
apparently,
about this.
yeah, like he apparently there was abuse and sexual misconduct, and he sent her like unsolicited pics and stuff. So might just be worth mentioning, like, hey man, you're making a movie about a woman getting raped and becoming a statistic, not even becoming a statistic because no one cares about the plight of Native women, and you cast Jeremy Renner. That seems like it might age poorly.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, if that happened this year, but this is almost 10 years old now,
Yes,
uh,
yes.
like, it's not easy to predict the future. It's kind of hard to do so.
And like I
There's a
said,
long history of people trying.
and like I said, I don't think that this makes it a bad movie. I feel like given the subject matter, it's just worth an asterisk.
No, I think that's fair. I think the other thing that keeps coming to mind with me about the Native women thing, if we're gonna talk about like the racial dynamics of the movie, I already talked about how like the scene with John Barathol, talking about his time as a war veteran of Iraq while he's in bed with an 18-year-old character is just a bit weird. But then there's like also another element to it, talking about Jeremy Renner being a white guy in this movie and like he's got a Native wife. Certainly, you know, mixed race relationships do still happen and are, fairly widespread. Um, but again, if you're gonna make it about Native women and they just like so happen to show all the Native women in this with white men mostly, I don't. It's just a weird thing to do. It leaves a weird taste in your mouth by the end. I feel. Maybe that's just me though.
I really feel like the final title card kind of invites a level of criticism that it probably wouldn't have gotten if they just didn't pretend like this was about something deeper than it was. Uh, that
That's
sort of
fair.
becomes the larger problem, because when I watched the movie and that title card show up, I was kind of bewildered. I'm like, wait, when was this movie ever about these things? It became very strange. Like, I think it still would have been worth to talk about the rape conversation and whether or not Jeremy Renner should have been recast for like a native actor. I think a lot of that stuff would still be warranted, but I feel like when you end on this message of like this movie is more important for this particular social issue, then the appeal of it as like a solid B movie starts to deteriorate a little bit because it's inviting you to ask more serious questions that it cannot ever justify in and of itself. And I think that that's kind of the biggest problem with it, and the biggest problem with a lot of like weighty serial killer movies that try to be about quote unquote the issues, but they just kind of exacerbate them in themselves. Like, I was watching another movie a few weeks ago called The Rip, which is a Netflix original movie, but it stars Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. And they play two cops who've gotten to like a stash house of like $20 million. And the whole sort of like conflict of the movie is Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are best friends, but one of them wants to steal the money and one of them wants to take it to the police station. And they're just bickering back and forth, and that's the movie. It's a very dumb movie. It's very dumb. It entirely coasts on the charisma of its two actors, and that's why it's great. It's a solid like 3-star B movie that you would turn on TNT on like a Sunday night. It's great. It's a lost art form, And I think for like a majority of its runtime, that's exactly what Wind River is. It's a solid B movie that you just kind of like sit back and watch with the family or something for like a serious movie night, and you have fun and you enjoy the vibes and you enjoy the tension and you're kind of into it for Jeremy Renner's really cool character. And then by the end, it feels like it's trying to be way more than that, and it just cannot sustain that.
It's a good. I don't think family movie is the right word here. I think it's a good movie to watch with your dad.
There you go. Yeah, it's a good dad
yeah.
movie. It's a good
Yeah.
movie where your dad is just supervising the TV and standing up the whole time.
Mm-hmm. I can't say my dad never did that, but I keep hearing people talk about it. I'm like, man, I missed out on some serious like dad culture.
Dude, it's so funny because every Clint Eastwood movie is a dad movie, and I've been kind of watching all of his filmography in order, and I've gotten to the point where like when I'm watching the movie on like a Sunday morning, like before football, I'm just standing in front of the TV with my arms crossed. I'm like, oh shit, I'm doing the dad thing. Watching a dad movie.
Steve, quick! Go put that in your dating profile.
Just gonna take a picture of me in the dad pose watching a movie.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm clearly ready for a long-term serious relationship. Look at me, I'm already unlocking dad skills.
Just need to get a tool belt around my waist 24/7.
There you go.
But yeah, no, like it's a dad movie. It's a solid like B plus kind of movie that that you can enjoy for the most part. And I think anytime it tries to reach beyond that, it just kind of falls flat.
Which is interesting because, like, again, I love his whole speech on the mountain and stuff. And, like, you know, every other line about what he's saying just goes so hard. You know, like, that girl was a warrior. That shit's so cool. It's a way to, like, give, you know, the body found in the fucking trash pile at the beginning of every Law and Order episode more like, you know, actual character and humanity to actually give some comments on that, and especially the fact that they reflect on it later with Elizabeth Olsen in the hospital room. She's like, she ran 6 miles, and they're just like so blown away by that. It's just so good. But like the native aspects of it really do start to they're used quite well to some extent in this movie, and they're also its like biggest detriment at other times. It's a really interesting dynamic that this movie has with those with that aspect of the characters in it.
Yeah, it's a real double-edged sword in that way. I don't know if this is the kind of movie where I feel like I would ever visit it. Like I think a lot of quintessential dad movies you can kind of just watch whenever, because I think the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, there's kind of a grimy undercurrent that's kind of hard to ignore after you've thought about it. But it is worth. I feel like it's worth at least watching once because, like you said, that speech on the mountain, the thing at the end at the hospital bed. I even love the scene when like he's on the snowmobile and he's tracking the lions, and he finds them in their cave, but then he moves on because he finds the body of her boyfriend. All of the like just him hanging out doing wildlife stuff. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess we're close enough to the end that I think we've kind of talked the movie to death. So yeah, let's go ahead and just go on to ratings. And even as much of like the bad stuff we talked about, I really don't feel like I've changed through the conversation where I stand on this. So I'm still gonna give it 3 out of 5 lions, because you better not fucking kill those things. I don't care if they ate a steer. They're good lions. They did a good job. Maybe he needs to take better care of his steer.
I'm not gonna lie. I wish the hunting the lions was a bigger plot point. I almost wanted him to do more of that and solving less crimes.
I don't know, because if he had to kill the lions, I might have killed him. So,
what if he gave that speech to a lion cub?
I don't know. She ran 6 miles.
I need it. I need it. I want a sequel where he's just hanging out with the lions.
Yeah.
I'll give it. I'm right there with you. I'll give it 3 out of 5 John Barathol cameo jump scares. I literally, when he showed up on screen, like, oh shit, it's John Barathol. He's a really good actor. I like him a lot.
I like John Barathol quite a bit. That little Punisher clip, no, is like clearly one of my favorite things.
If you haven't seen it, 100% recommend Ford versus Ferrari. He's really good in that too.
I might have to check that one out because I love car movies.
His ultimate car movie, one of my favorite car movies. Super good.
Yeah. Is F1 any good? I know you go see everything.
I liked F1. I think the
Okay.
racing scenes in F1 are stellar. I think the sort of like human drama in between can be kind of a little boring here and there. But overall, I liked it. I thought it was a pretty solid movie.
I just remember the shot from the trailer, like from the car POV to the start
Yeah.
line was just so fucking sick. I was like, okay, I might have to go watch this.
There's a whole thing in the movie about like racing styles, and it's kind of anime in that way. And Brad Pitt's character, he's a combat racer. He builds his cars for combat, so he's going in really tight behind them, and he's swerving so the air currents cause the other person to crash, and it's super sick to watch.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's good, but it's still no Speed Racer 2008.
Correct. Correct. It's
okay.
nowhere near the tier of Speed Racer. I mean, Speed Racer is like S tier. Ferrari, the Michael Mann movie, and Ford versus Ferrari are like A tier. And then this is like a solid C tier.
Okay. All right. Where were you on the ratings for this, or did you already say it and I forgot?
I already said the 3 out of 5 John Barathol jump scare cameos.
Okay. My bad. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Luddite.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.